Here's a little question for you. Have you ever read this sign? And I don't mean this text, but what's actually written on the sign itself. And not just this sign, but all of the signs across the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and even the entire Zelda series. The signs can be found all across the Kingdom of Hyrule, on the roads, in the villages, and carved into stone. Plus the countless signs that this guy is constantly trying and failing to construct across the entire map. I have to hand it to him, he's got more perseverance than me. Some of these signs, like information boards and directional signs, will allow you to interact with them to get a little bit more context as to why they're there. Maybe you're wondering what this big pile of materials is the first time you encounter one in Tears of the Kingdom. Or maybe you want to check that you're going the right way, which is especially helpful when you're playing the game with no minimap, or if it's your first time experiencing one of the numerous entries in the series. But most people don't pay attention to these signs at all. They're largely there as decorative flavor. In Tears of the Kingdom, they're there to make the post-apocalyptic world feel like it was once established. And it's not just road signs, of course, but also shop signs. But when you see this shop in Hateno Village, what stands out to you? How do you know what kind of store it is? It's not the sign itself, but it's the big decorative imagery looming above it. To this end, you'd think that these signs are largely pointless. And yes, they are. But they also have meaning. Just not necessarily meaning for you as the player, or for anyone, really. If you're a long-time fan of the Zelda series, you'll know that the series has introduced numerous versions of the Hylian alphabet throughout the many different iterations of Hyrule. In most games, this means that we can translate the displayed Hylian text into something that we can actually understand. But why would you? Well, counterpoint, why wouldn't you? Because it's not just the translating that is the fascinating thing, but it's the meaning behind it all. Signs as a concept exist purely to be useful in both video games and real life. But in the Zelda series, when we look closer, they can be strangely and provocatively useless, or just offer silly little jokes. What a wonderful thing video games are. Let's start off with the world of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's not new news that these signs can indeed be translated, as many players, myself included, took the time to look at them almost a decade ago in Breath of the Wild. And with around 20 mainline entries in the Zelda series to date, that's a lot of potential signs to look at over the years. But I still find it fascinating. So let's start with some of the direct translations we can find in Tears of the Kingdom. Here is the Hylian alphabet that is used in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, as well as Triforce Heroes and A Link Between Worlds. It's actually a slightly modified version of the Hylian alphabet that was implemented in 2011's Skyward Sword. Now you might be wondering, why are there so many versions of the Hylian alphabet, and how does that fit into the whole timeline? Well, keep wondering, because I'm not touching the timeline. Not today. This version of the Hylian alphabet has a glyph for each one of the 26 letters of the English language, meaning it is easy and simple to make a clear translation from one to the other. So now let's take this with us and take a look at some of the different signs you can find in Tears of the Kingdom. This is probably one of the most common signs you'll find in the game, as it's a basic information board to provide context about whatever it's placed next to. You can interact with it to get a little bit of extra context as to what information it's actually there to provide, but no matter where you come across it, this sign will have the exact same Hylian text displayed on it. Now this one in particular, if we interact with it, it will read Hyrule Restoration Materials. Use this materials cache for all of your building needs. Come find us if you'd like a dream home. Hudson Construction. I don't know about you, but that seems like a lot of words to fit on a 6-letter sign. So, using our Hylian alphabet, what does it actually say? Read me. Yeah, that checks out. Okay, so now let's take a look at this road sign that's offering up directions. So if we interact with this one specifically, it will tell us that to the left is Hyrule Ridge, and to the right is Zora's Domain in Akala. Okay, that's good, that's helpful. Thank you, sign. But what it actually says is this way and that way. If we're taking this sign at face value and assuming that the Hylians wandering around the roads can't actually interact with it to get that extra information, and they're just reading the Hylian text, they're going to have no clue where to go. This way or that way. This goes for the arrow sign as well. If we interact with it, it will tell us that Gulrun City is in this direction. But if you read it in Hylian instead, it says right. Well, I mean, it is pointing right, so it's not wrong. However, there are countless signs in Tears of the Kingdom that we cannot interact with, but still display Hylian text. This means that they can only be taken at face value without the additional flavor text to accompany them. An obvious one is the stables. You don't need any sort of Hylian alphabet knowledge to look at this and realize that says stable. It's clear as day. Clear as hay. You have various signs in Hateno Village as well. There's this one that says tailor. This store says pharmacy, which is kind of interesting because it's just a general store. It doesn't sell pharmaceuticals at all. I don't think I need a prescription for goat butter or wheat. Maybe I do in Hyrule, I don't know. The dye shop just says colors, which is quite funny. The inn over here says hotel, which it really should just say hostel instead, but you know, bring in the customers, I guess. And then a custom sign over here that leads to Hateno School, and it actually says school. I half expected it just to say left, so this is an improvement. There are also some pamphlets we can read on this message board as well. The titles read Caution, Account, and Congrats. All pretty simple, but there's a lot more to see in Kakariko Village. Each establishment in Kakariko Village has a sign as well, though these ones are also accompanied by a few different banners that say different things as well. And some of them are kind of bizarre. This store's main sign says Sundries, and it has additional banners, one of which says Sundries Galore, and the other just says Wares. So, all pretty straightforward there. Then you have another shop with the tailor sign once again, with two banners, one of which says Protect Yourself, and the other says Get Defensive. But then the inn is where it gets kind of interesting. Once again, the main sign says Hotel, much like the hotel in Hateno Village. But the additional banners are strange. One says Rest Your Bones, but like, you're spelt Y-E-R, like, rest your bones. That's kind of funny. But then there's this banner that I've stared at for way too long, and I can't make sense of it at all. All of the other text I've come across has some sort of translation to it, but this just nothing. I have no idea. Like, these first two letters are like RD or GF or RF or something. Like, they're both consonants that can be multiple different things, but they just don't make sense no matter what you would pick. And then the next bit says iPod on, which I don't know why it would say that, but I swear it does. Like, there's some little joke about going into the inn and lying down and putting your iPod on to just chill out. Would Nintendo make a joke about that? Probably not. I don't know what this is. That's a stretch, but I have no answer for what this banner means. If you can make sense of this, please tell me, because this is going to keep me up at night for the rest of my days, I fear. There are also these stone memorial tablets that can be found across the kingdom, such as this one here in Hyrule Castle Town. Interacting with it will read, I dedicate this monument to the memory of the souls lost to the calamity, Zelda. And if we look at the Hylian text, it reads as exactly that. This sign actually reads in Hylian the same as it does in the English interaction text. It's identical. No time for silly jokes when it comes to the calamity, I guess. That's probably for the best. Then we have another interesting example of translation in this game that kind of stands out from the rest. And that comes from these Hudson construction signs that this poor fool is trying to put up all over the map. You'll encounter this guy many times across Tears of the Kingdom, and will probably end up helping him all of those times. Well, he's not going to do it on his own, so unless you decide to just leave him and go past and carry on, you'll probably help. Now, if you look at the sign, you'll see a picture of Hudson, the owner of Hudson Construction, who's based out of Tarrytown. Now, you'd assume that this sign must say Hudson Construction in some way, and yes, it does. but also it doesn't. The smaller lettering beneath says construction company. That makes sense. The main wording, however, says Enokida, not Hudson. Now this is interesting because Enokida is the Japanese name for Hudson. One example in the whole game where we're getting a Japanese translation from the Hylian text rather than English. This is the only one I could find. Now it's not only the Japanese name for this character in the English version of the game, but it's also the English spelling of the Japanese name in Hylian. It's like a triforce of languages, all on this one sign. But this is not the first time in the Zelda series that the Hylian text has leaned into Japanese translation. This is Ocarina of Time, and if we start to look at the signs here, things can be a little bit strange. This is the Hylian alphabet used in Ocarina of Time, and it doesn't translate into English letters, but instead Japanese hiragana. Now if we start in the Kokiri forest, there's a couple of signs that we can look at first. There's the basic sign, which at a first glance you can kind of tell is just a splattering of similar letters. In fact, this is the unique word, and all of the rest are the same thing but flipped and mirrored. So what does it say? Well, if we use the alphabet to decipher it, it kind of says Nintendo. Not exactly, but almost. If we ignore the fact that Nintendo would actually be written in katakana in real life, this sort of reads as a vague reference at most. Ocarina of Time's Hylian alphabet only includes some hiragana, it doesn't include everything, so it's kind of limited in that way. So we can kind of just assume it's probably an Easter egg and move on. Then we have this arrow sign, which we can attempt to translate the same way. However, this reads as ma ku hi ri me tsu se. Now this means nothing. And to make it even more interesting, when the sign is mirrored and pointing in the other direction, the text is also mirrored. So I don't think it's really supposed to mean anything. Now to be clear, I do not speak Japanese, so maybe I'm missing something here, but I have spoken with a friend who is familiar with Japanese, and specifically Japanese hiragana, and just this word seemingly makes no sense. Given that the other sign was hardly meaningful as well, I can only assume that this is intended, or not intended, I should say, to actually read as anything at all. This sign means nothing. Probably. Let me know if I'm wrong and it says something that I didn't catch, because I'm kind of curious about it. Next, I wanted to take a look at the shops in Castletown Market. Well, not in the original, clearly, or not clearly. So I needed to upgrade to the 3DS remake to actually get a good look. There are 5 main shops we can look at in the market here. The Bombchu Bowling Alley, the Shooting Gallery, the Happy Mask Shop, the Potion Shop, and the Bazaar. The bowling alley sign seems to have no clear, direct translation that I could see, though I suspect Homuchiu to mean Bombchu, and Horinku to mean Boringu, which would translate to bowling. It's close enough that I can infer that, but maybe someone with more hiragana experience can offer some insight there. The Shooting Gallery seems to translate directly to Hyria's target shooting stall. I looked into it, and Hyria translates to Hyrule, seems to do anyway, so that would make sense, and it does pop up a few times. The Happy Mask Shop shows as Hyria Omenya, which may be a difference as a result of translation. Omen, happy, maybe there's crossover there, but again, if you have more knowledge to offer on it, please do, because I find this really interesting. Then the Potion Shop has a sign for Hyria Pharmacy, which is much like the pharmacy in Hateno Village, only this one actually does sell pharmaceuticals, so not goat butter. Actually, I should ask him to check in the back. And finally, the Bazaar, where the sign reads, "There are all sorts of things." Now, if that isn't honest advertising, I don't know what is. This is super interesting because it seems like the 2011 3DS remake of Ocarina of Time put more time into making Hylian text translate into actual words, be it Japanese. And again, most players are not going to be familiar with the Hylian alphabet to actually make sense of these, and even then, the majority of the English player base is not going to be familiar with Japanese on top of that. And that means that the meaning behind these signs are locked behind 2 translations. But how cool is it that it's still included in the game? Also, a side note, the 3DS version of Ocarina of Time, the Kokiri signs are different again, but I couldn't easily match these ones to the Hylian alphabet. I think this may be due to it no longer being Hylian in this version of the game. It seems like it resembles a Kalan text more, which would be ancient Hylian or Sheikah language, but I'm not even going to get into that. Finally, I just want to quickly go back to the original version of Ocarina of Time and point out the sign above the gate in Kakariko Village. The sign actually reads as Kakariko Mura, Mura being village or hamlet in Japanese. So this sign does actually make sense and serves its purpose. However, this is read as you are leaving Kakariko Village. As you enter, the sign itself is mirrored, so instead, you're getting a flipped backwards version of Kakariko Village, which is kind of fun. I can only assume that the asset is just texture flipped on the other side of the sign, but still a fun detail. Isn't that amusing? I'm amused. It's clear to see that as the Zelda series went on, Nintendo made more of a point of making the various Hylian text iterations actually translate. Early on, it leaned into Japanese translation and was largely there for decoration alone. Nowadays, in Zelda, you have signs that you can straight up read if you are familiar with the current Hylian alphabet. Not always, of course, and other times it doesn't even have any real meaning to it. It's just a little joke. I think that's the perfect way to do it. The meaning that comes from meaningless things. Signs are supposed to present us with useful information, and in these games, it seems like they just present us with information. Not really useful. And even then, that's a stretch. Sometimes it's not even information, it's just a little joke. And you might never actually stop to look at these signs or even think about what they might read as. At most, you'll be looking at the interactive text instead, or in the case of shops, you'll be looking at all of the imagery surrounding it. That's going to do the heavy lifting. And that makes sense. The imagery makes it clear what you're looking at, regardless of language. This is not needed. It's all just decorative flavor and flourish, and signs that say, rest your bones, or something about your iPod, or this way and that way. And that is just a wonderful and pointless thing that these games do. I love you, Zelda games. Never change. Now, I've only looked at 2 different Zelda games here, 3 technically with Breath of the Wild, but I encourage you to go and look at your favorite Zelda entries and see what interesting signs you can find, and see if they actually translate into anything translatable, or if it's just nonsense, or if there's more Apple products referenced in Zelda games. I don't know at this point. It's a lot of fun. I promise. I had fun staring at these signs for a long time. I'm almost fluent in the Hylian written alphabet now. Now, can somebody tell me what this means? It cannot be iPod. I look at it, I can't read anything other than iPod anymore. I don't know what, I genuinely do not know. I've looked at this for over an hour straight. I do not know. It's driving me mad. I need to sleep, but I won't. iPod. I don't know.